morning to everyone who's present here and people who are present abroad as well. For another session of this training. I'd like to ask you, first of all, if you'd like to say something about our session from yesterday. Anything. Think about it. I'd like you to highlight some concepts, some ideas, some notes you might have taken from yesterday's session. The 6 M's. Wait, ladies first, and then I'll give you the microphone.
That's legal.
The 6 M's. How do you believe the 6 M's are important? All of them are connected among each other, and I think that they're all fundamental for the logistic development. Gonçalo, why did you also refer to the 6 M's? It's important for the development of the competitive advantages, as we said yesterday. More. We also have the pipeline we mentioned yesterday, the logistic cycle. Miguel, what do you highlight? You can say the same thing. We mentioned other things. It's the advantage of being first to speak, of course. The microphone, please. I was going to highlight the 6 M's. I believe that it was what I identified more because it's about the competitive advantages. So nothing else to highlight? Vasco. The 6 M's are the main players here. Yes, the 6 M's. I believe it frames everything. And what is the importance of a good logistic cycle, a good logistic process for the competitiveness of the northern region of Portugal, for example? This question I'm asking here to the group can be asked to people abroad as well, trying to understand in what economic region they are localizing, and how the factor of logistic efficiency is an important factor for the competitiveness of their regional economy. So please give us your opinion. I'd like to have your opinion on this point. If they can answer, please, and intervene, just tell us. We will find a way to integrate their contribution. One of the main advantages of this logistics, so to say, are the costs of those. Of course, the reduction of costs. That's going to make the price much more competitive. Miguel, something else about this? About the way a good management of the supply chain can be important for the economic competitiveness of a region. Well, I'm not directly linked to this area, but the part of the development management is very important. It's what I do every day. Management, customers, and control of quality. All of these are important elements, and that's what we mentioned yesterday. Just one question, Miguel. When you're speaking with a customer and you want to establish a transport process, either to gather customers, to make him a regular customer of yours, how can you present a good management of the supply chain as a factor of decision for the customer to work with you? Or don't you use this factor as a sales factor? The management part and the quality management part. For example, last Friday I had a meeting with some commercial directors, and he's the one who's going to sell the product because he understands more about it than I do. But there are some factors that differentiate in the case of depending on the customer. Some people want a quicker service with lower costs. Well, it depends on the criteria that the customer wants. We can't always give the best price with the best quality. We have to reach an agreement and we try to differentiate according to the customer. Our process doesn't finish when the cargo reaches the customer. We always have an assessment then to see if the customer was satisfied. We have several ways to evaluate it. It's done at the end of the year, but we tend to do it every semester. And so I try to evaluate them on the first approach during a meeting. We try to evaluate a number of questions, and then we make some sort of survey, and we try to see which were the mistakes that happened with the customer, what happened on their side, what happened on ours, and try to find solutions. Patricia? In the area of transport, I'm completely out. I know, but you are customs brokers. You provide a service to the customers. Your customers also make some pressure about the time it takes for them to receive the cargo. Yes, we are more and more precious, having more access to the tools, and the customers being aware of it. They put more pressure on us in terms of a computer system. Nowadays, we have the possibility to send something in half an hour when back then it used to take 2 to 3 days, and the customers are aware of that, and they keep putting pressure on us. That's an important data because the economic competition that occurs among companies is made at several levels in companies of the same region, and where a customs broker can be a differentiating factor for the sale of a product, but the competition is also developed between companies of the Galicia region and companies coming from Great Porto. If the services, the logistics services as a whole, that is the custom brokers, the freight forwarder, the port, the train, are not efficient here in the northern region, it can be a problem regarding the efficiency that we're looking to have in the northern area of Galicia. This comparison that I'm doing with Great North and Galicia, this happened in the whole global economy as we speak of it. So the competition is developed through the excellency and what are the factors of management of the logistic process in a physical way, in a computer way, in a financial way. This is what leads a pair of shoes, some fruit, to reach the market of the consumers outside of our production sphere, outside Portugal, outside Spain, starting with the efficiency of the quality, tangible of the product, whether it is fruit, whether it is shoes, whether it is shirts as well, wine. The efficiency has to do with the products, with the tangible qualities of the product, but also with the non-tangible qualities that are the frequency, the reliability of the delivery, the conditions in which it arrives, the information of the course. All of this is a sales factor because it's going to contribute for the final customer. Once again, we have to understand the final customer. Is he or is he not going to trust the option that he's going to make? Some people are very faithful to brands more and more. That's why in terms of marketing, brands make a great international effort to develop a mark. Well, Nike wants to be everywhere in the world. So does Adidas, so does Hugo Boss. All these matters make us be much more detailed in the analysis of the logistic process of what is the logistic cycle, because the logistic cycle accompanies, as we saw yesterday, if we have the production here, whether it is grapes or shoes, the logistic cycle starts from this moment, that is the supply of products and materials that are complementary to the delivery to the final customer. So this is what we call the logistic cycle. This logistic cycle has to be assessed, and that's why we can think about what we spoke about here, that is the maturity of the logistic network. So we spoke about these levels, the organization of the processes. When we analyze and when we are technicians who are involved with the logistic process, we have to understand what is the level of maturity from the point A to the point C. That is, from the beginning of the alphabet to the end of the alphabet. We have several similar maturity levels, but we also have very different ones. We have maturity processes where we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and where we can have a logistic chain where customers are at this phase of the process when others are over there. And this creates a great variation and a great lack of trust in the supply chain that might make people buying in Central Europe make different buying options because there's no reliability, there's uncertainty, or because it's going to constitute stocks. And by doing this, we are having an added cost that can lead to a lesser volume of sales, a lesser volume of intensity, where all the agents of the economic process might lose here. Does that make sense to you? That's why we speak a lot about logistic indicators, key performance indicators, as we said yesterday, and as we are still mentioning it today. I'd like to ask a question to people here and to people abroad as well. In your perspective, which are 3 logistic indicators that are important for your activity? Because in a way or another, you're all involved with the logistic process. So please find me 3 indicators, 3 aspects. Let's not call them logistic indicators. Let's speak about 3 performances, 3 types of activities that are important for the logistic process, whether it is before the first phase of the logistic cycle, whether it is during the production, whether it is after. 3 important factors, 3 important indicators. Abroad, please do the same exercise. Write 3 indicators down or 3 actions that have to be transformed or for which we have to work on. So find an indicator and a way to calculate it, please. You have 5 to 10 minutes to do it. Abroad, do we have any input? Elio, I'm sorry, we don't have a seat for you. You may sit there. You can sit here in George's place because he's not coming today. Who wants to kick off? Who wants to be the first to speak about these indicators? Gonçalo? Okay, let's give you the microphone then. In 30 seconds, Benfica would solve this solution. Between 91 and 92. 30 seconds is enough. That was the fatal moment where Porto scored against the Benfica. 94 minutes, and I have to solve this problem. That wasn't just 30 seconds, but it was worth it. As Fernando Pessoa used to say, everything is worth it when the soul isn't small. But you also fired your coach, so the mysteries of management, and you got Lopetegui instead, which is there are no logistic indicators to justify that. Ellie, you're not saying anything. Oh, you're from Porto too, but you're retained today. You're a humble Porto fan. Who begins? So, Gonçalo. 3 aspects that I handle on a daily basis, and I know that these aspects are very important for the customer. That is a fast answer from the moment that the request is made. So let's write it down. A fast answer to the invoice request. Well, assuming that the customer accepts the estimate we give him, a great follow-up. Well, that's a very large concept. Give feedback of where the merchandise is, in what state it is. So the customer also values the traceability of the cargo in this case. And sometimes it's not just about the cargo. It can also be the documentation. So cargo and documentation. Another contribution, please. Choose. Faz. Well, the proximity of the exit point, but is that a logistic factor? The closeness of the client, of the customer, and of the exit point, is that an indicator? Well, maybe it isn't. Well, it can be a factor of choice, but it's not an indicator. But it's good for us to clarify that. Another contribution? We have the answer time. Well, the answer time is something else. Well, Gonçalo mentioned the administrative answer time. Here I'm speaking about the answer time that has to do with the transport of the merchandise. I'm dividing this on purpose. So we have the time of the collect, so to say. Okay. Who's next? Elio. Good afternoon to all the people here and people abroad. I have here 3 indicators. The pickup time, that we already mentioned. The transit time, that is the time that it will take to take the merchandise from point A to point B, or to warehouse A to warehouse B, and the delivery time, that is, for example, if we have that is the time of the last milestone. That is the time of the final delivery, so to say. That we call the milestone. Okay. More. Miguel. Then Patricia, and then we'll just come back. These are indicators. Of course, the price and the conditions of payment, I think it's important for the customers, but is that a logistic indicator? It's part of the whole logistic. But is it a logistic indicator? What do you think? No, it's not a logistic indicator. It's a competitiveness factor, it's a decision factor, but it's a production indicator. A company can have taxes and gross margins of 40–50%, but it's not a logistic indicator. It's a step of a process that has to do with the logistic process that is directly linked with the support to the production cycle of the activity, whether it is the service or the logistic. Can you pass to Patricia now? I don't have much to add. I had the time from the moment the raw material leaves the place to the final arrival, to the final consumer. Well, it's not here yet. This is the time of the total cycle of the order. For example, somewhere in Sydney, someone ordered a wine port container. That's the time we're going to measure here, how long it will take from the moment someone placed the order in Sydney to the moment they receive the actual order. So it's the total time of the whole cycle, the complete transit time of the order. Very good, Patrice, for someone who didn't have any indicators. Well, the indicators might seem the same. Those that are more or less important. Now, notice this. When you see this, you can imagine lots of scenarios. Let's imagine two. For example, the transport that happens here from the port, from Oporto, where we have the warehouse. We're here speaking about stoves from the Meirelles brand, that is a great exporter, and he wants to bring his stove here to Dubai. And they want to they want to go through Singapore as well and to the Emirates. This journey is going to have a road transport from Porto here to the port of Leixões, and then somewhere it will go to other ports that you see here, and then they will follow by road or railway or airways
This is the scenery A. We have another scenery which is more simple, which is a company in Porto, once again. That Porto is in the cellars in Gaia, and it's selling port wine to Lisbon, so we have a direct flight. What we will measure in logistics, is it the same thing? Have a dimension of time, dimension of quantity, of quality, but we'll have different indicators, or will they be the same? What do you think? How can we divide the activity and the action? Here we are only measuring a process, right? Direct exit from one point to the other. Which of these indicators can we apply here? All of them? There is no gathering here, so here we have a moment of loading and unloading. What you can measure is the different time before the time of arrival and the arrival of the vehicle that's going to load. So there is no collection. What we would place here, we didn't need to have complicating something that's simple. We could just put this out of use. We could ask for the service for Monday, and they could only come in Thursday, attending to the level of maturity of the structure of the road transport. If the transporter wants to start, but there is other that wants to do it at the same time, tomorrow, today, anytime. So we were worried. We only had to measure this one, but we could add others. For example, rates of damages. The order came there without any damage, without a broken box. There is an example, wasn't it? That could happen. I can tell you in my experience in a company that I worked, of all the trucks that came from Lisbon to Porto on a pallet of wines, there were always a box in the pallet that would break. But then it was funny because when we saw it, it's from that box. We only had the bottleneck of a bottle, because all the others, this one, for example, we knew that the 6 boxes were broken. What do you think? The six bottles were broken, or was it a coincidence that was one bottle that would break? It would put at stake a box of 6, so we are speaking about other indicators of damages, lags. These are logistics indicators. We need to measure from here to there, or does it make sense to have the ability to identify and segment stage 1? Let's think that more than being a direct transport, they exit strange, but they need to go to Rotterdam to have a new guidance of cargo. To be 1, 2, 3, and then we would have 4, 5, 6, and another transport would be 7, 8. They have 9 times at least of great dimension, because then each one of them has different stages. Because when we have 3 containers, 1, 2, 3, that arrive to Rotterdam, we will have 3 distinct operations to Rotterdam. It would be the same supply. In Rotterdam, it will be separated, and we'll have an action of reception, okay, of unloading, an action of internal movement, of repositioning to marking the other line, and the cargo made onto the ship. Does it make any sense to you? From what we can see when we should have. What indicators can we use in each moment? What are the indicators that we'll have in port relations to measure the activity of the port? Please tell me. Indicators. Storage, the container, safety of cargo. Elio. Time that the ship waits outside to be able to come in. How will we measure the time for the ship? The scale from the time it has the arrival to the 2 miles or to the VTS until it exits. Only of Porto Leixões. Yes, of course, because you knew the quantity of those that this brings. There is that question: in how many parts does the head divide? And there are the ones who do, and the others who don't. Those who don't say depends on the hit. So this time it arrives, it comes in a container. It will come in road transport the time that it takes from for taking it from the container to get in a port and afterwards time to get to the line, be in the position. Well, we are understanding now here they have a series of stages in which it is bigger and bigger. The process of transport since the manufacture of wines, that up until it reaches to this the process, it has to a lot of sub-processes. In each process, it has its agents of work, and it has its own work circuits. And this is used to develop each one of them of different shipholds and different interest process of development and exit on the new situation for the user. When we are concerned with the logistic quality, what we need to know is to map the complete circuits of movement of goods. Complete circuit in 3 levels: information and physical. The information needs to be previous, during and after. That we can say that for those who have the physical action can correspond to 2 or 3 informative actions. This is a very important data. The quality of the system of information management can make a difference in all of the 3. I will give you an example. We have a cargo at the destination that goes in pallets to be in the containers, 20 pallets. And all of them have the destination at a place that we spoke before, for example, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, or something. But our client says, well, I just sold 3 pallets to go to Riyadh. In that stage, can you separate those 3 pallets and send them to Riyadh? No, it's not possible. No, because the container is sealed before it gets to its destination. Well, of course, if it's just in the freight forwarder, it's possible. Okay, but Gonzalo, the container is in Lisbon. Can we do something or not? Yeah, sure. This is the difference. Ellie, please. I'm sorry, this is an example of good management. The terminals of the logistics centers of 2nd and 3rd line, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd line. That's why the ports are starting to develop this role. Yesterday we spoke that we need to have a main focus. I think that our client is the one who orders it. It is in fact our client, okay? It's for whom we wish to receive our money from. But our client needs to be in sync with the final client, and I do too. There is a change in the destination of the cargo. We need to search for corrections. This is the same thing. To have a reduction of costs, because they all would go to Abu Dhabi and then 3 of them went to Riyadh. Do you think? Do you understand? We are working with logistic chains not from the last century, from the first half of the last century, because we are formatted, we are programmed to say no to everything that's not immediate, not wanting to have or to make political judgments. And my satisfaction is to see when we Portuguese Our political style is reacting with change. It has nothing to do with the constitution, which is the possibility of those who are leading the company. It's not the first force, something that it's completely admittable and that is current practice of the countries of the European Union where we are. So we are not programmed. We are not used to it. We don't like to change. Even if those changes are positive, the reaction, well, it's never happened. I never did this before, and our reaction is to say no. Logistics has a competitive role. It has a determinant role in the economies of each region. What we are showing, they understood that they could not be a passive agent, not passive, comfortable agents in the supply chain. To introduce the quality that we wish to bring, it is possible to act in the container. We could do it in the shirt and in the verb. How do you think ports were in the 1860s? In the 70s and the 80s, what do you think were the main changes? You don't need to live that time to have that notion, that idea. 1970, for example, did it work the same way? Port? Ellie, you have some responsibilities here. Well, in good truth, everything has changed since the technology, the hard components, ships, terminals, and the cargo units is not general cargo, but it became in containers and not only. Liquids, chemicals, of course, but also in the soft component, which is on the level all the environment that it's generated, the port activity has been changing. The movement of the Lisbon port, how many ports did it have to be in 1960 to do this? How many? We would have ports from Lisbon to Lisbon, and it was not enough. The increase of the efficiency has been, the productivity has been brutal. Speaking about capacity of tons to move the hours used to unload the ship, to receive bigger ships, and the natural conditions of the port are the same. What changed was the infrastructures that were placed, but not only infrastructures, the equipment, 6Ms of yesterday, equipment, manpower, machines, methods, management, vision, environment. The ports are a big network that have a deep transformation. There are ports from the 60s, a type of port in the 80s, and there is a type of port starting on the 21st century. They are completely different. It was difficult to find a port in the 60s that was not completely public. The governance model was completely public. Today we have several situations. We have ports that are private, not in Portugal. In Portugal, that can be seen with concessionaires, but we have private ports. In England, for example, I don't think there is a single port that's not private. Maybe there is one or two public, but I think there are concessed ports, so they are all public or they are all private. There are great changes also in this process. What do I want to conclude from this? That in accordance with the extension and the complexity of the logistics chain where we are inserted in, we need to apply logistical indicators in accordance with the dimension, the complexity of the logistic process. What we want to measure has to do with this informative cycle, physical and financial. And the financial cycle is not an indicator, it's a profitability and cost for us and for the clients, okay? That's how you can do the math and see the cost of tons moved in each port It's an option of transport, of course, the cost by ton and of the freight forwarder according to the customs regime in which we are inserted in. All of this will bring added cost. We need to understand that each one of these cycles, information cycle, political cycle, which are the indicators that we will use, and we will only use them as long as we are mapping the logistic network. Does this make sense? Any questions? No? Out there, any questions? No? So this is the next step. How can we discover value in each step of the logistics chain, in each stage? For example, when we have a container, when we have a period of cargo or freight forwarder, in this first moment, can it add value to the process? I'm questioning the freight forwarders here. We have requests for collecting pallets to be transported to Europe. From Bregua, Guarda, and in charge. How can it add some value? First question, what do you think is to add value? Second question, what is value? These are things that are important. It's not moral values. What is value? Who defines value? We need to understand this. From which point of view will we define what value is? Miguel. We will define the value from the point of view of the client. What can we add to the client? First answer. Value needs to be understood and appreciated by the client. By the initial client or the final client. Because we have the first one that brings the first initiative, that is to come and take it from my house, and the other that 1,000 miles away is defining the purchase. By a value defined by our internal point of view, that can exist, but it's defined by whom? By those who take decisions of acquisition of the service, and it thinks that the price that it will pay is adequate to the benefit of the institution, or the physical benefit and the financial benefit for the client. That's how we have the notion what is value. And in truth, we have this idea. All of you know, it's a company that you have a page on the web. You probably do. And all of them say that we add value to the client, right? Somewhere. Now I would like to ask you something. Okay, translate me that definition of value, please. You know, because value is gold. That's value. It has a pattern. Emotionally, we know that. How can we add that value? Well, with more quickness. And quickness is value. Why? Just because it's quick? The service that is quicker at a smaller cost. Okay, quick translated in less costs or great profitability because it will get earlier to the market and I will sell before my neighbor comes and sell the chickens. I sold chickens at 10 euros. If it can arrive later, I had to sell by 8. I see that the value is the 50 chickens that I sold with 2 added euros, 100 euros that I want to add to the initial value. How many times in your websites of your companies the value can be translated this type of objectiveness? If I had a page with someone who told me about transport, I wanted to understand clearly that what was the pattern time of delivery from Lisbon to Valencia. There are studies from Valencia, the pattern of delivery is 36 hours. And then I would inform my client that my pattern time of delivery was 24 hours, so I would add 8 hours, translated the arrival to the market, could say less 20% of stock. Less 20% in certain products could equal annually to $50,000 or 50,000 euros. When the value is not translated in a way that it can be measured, we are talking about flowers. If the values of the economy is evaluating are the ones that can be translated with consentment, my client will have more options for buying because he knows what is made of, the product is well delivered, it's satisfying the logistic attributes that we're speaking, the time, mode, quantity of the right conditions at the best cost possible. Does this make sense to you? So in that logic, the question is this one. How can we, in a path of gathering, of collection, and back to the freight forwarders, between Rega Chaves and Guarda, can we add value to our clients? How can we add value?
Vasco, Gonçalo. Patricia is not here yet, but we'll ask her, how can we add value here? Think about it a little bit. Joanna, do our friends have something to say? Okay. Let's try and motivate them. So, who wants to start? Let's start with the beginning, the microphone. Then we can add value saying to the customer that I'll make a great dedicated transport for this street chargement and I'll make a cheaper cost. How would you work on that? Well, instead of asking 3 different carriers, I'll give to one carrier the 3 services and ask him to give me a better cost. You'll go to Guarda Chaves and Régua with the same carrier. Well, you're not speaking with people who don't know the country. That won't work with me. This is a very rhetorical question. How are we going to add value? Well, it is, but it isn't at the same time. Elio, I believe that one of the strategies that we could follow is to promote, well, we'll close here, is to promote the door-to-door transport, work with deliveries out of time, for example, the possibility to deliver even during the night. Well, it is a factor of competitiveness, but the most important would be to create and demonstrate availability of the service. That is, say that we have in network a set of companies, set of smaller companies with which we have contacts and partnerships, and that it would make it easier for us to transfer the goods, even if I don't have at that time on that day a truck leaving for Guarda. I have a partnership with another carrier, and I could give him the good. Well, this is the point here, is the question of the collection for then sending it abroad. Yes, it is. Well, I think I agree more with Gonçalo, because we can say that it is a dedicated car because it will go to a certain place and then come back. But with the carrier, we can try and ask him to go to 3 places. Well, the problem is that our collection network can make this collection during the same day. It's not dedicated, it's the opposite. It's to prevent the collection network that already exists, and that might make the difference. So we make an order today, and today or tomorrow it's being recollected. So this adds value because we can answer to the customer in a fast way, telling him that the cargo can be delivered and can be sent in the same day of the order, in a few hours. So this adds value. Value, why? Because the time is very short, even though the traject is quite great, and we create the possibility that the customer in abroad can say that there are no goods for the order, but For example, we will collect the product somewhere here in Régua in Chartres, and it doesn't make it mandatory for our customers to wait to be able to have a supply line. So this is an advantage. It can translate into a lack of stock for the distributor somewhere in Europe or in other continent, and it gives reliability to the process. But it can go even further, not only the part of the collection. If we go further and behind the collection, the forwarder can be very important in the suggestion of the transport node. Because let's ask you something. Let's imagine we're speaking about transport in the inter-European transport. And let's speak about 20 pallets, for example. We can say that within this geography, and I can add Leiria, Guarda, Chaves, and Régua, all these Portuguese cities. How can the forwarder add value? It's not the question about, it's not about the collection here. It's about the adequate journey in terms of logistic indicators that are adequate in terms of quantity and price. How can we add value here? Let's say that the 4 points of these destinations is the port of Hamburg. How can the forwarder add value here? The forwarder, we can let Patricia speak here. How do you think the forwarder can add value here? Well, from the beginning, he has to choose the way it's going to transport to Hamburg. And what are the criteria that we are going to take into account to build the transport proposition? Try and see what quantities we're talking about, of course, what is one pallet and what is the other. Then try and see indeed the time that is necessary that the final customer needs for these last pallets. From then, and in terms of time, try to find the most adequate transport way. So we're trying here to make a diagnosis of the needs of the customer. The first great help is to make the customer diagnose the needs. So we need to see in which delivery time we need to get there, because our transport is conditioned by this question. If it is an order that is for tomorrow, or if that is an order that can arrive in 20 days, it can be completely different with strong impact on the cost the customer is going to have. So one of the things that we can clearly add value to is through a good relation with our customer, where we start to make a diagnosis of the need. This diagnosis is going to answer to the question of the time, of form, and of cost, because these factors are very important for the decision. Now I'm going to ask you a question, and we can even mention a little bit the notion of the trucks that leave Portugal nowadays. Do you have a notion of what that number might be in the transport sector and the movement of merchandise? Give me a number. Each of you, write down a number. Write down a number. How many trucks do you believe leave Portugal with international cargo within Europe? Well, we all play the lottery, almost all of us. Portuguese do have a tendency to win the Euro millions, so please, write down a number. Numbers. Who can show me the number? Patricia, I have no idea, but write down a number anyway. wants to give me the first number? Come on, give me some numbers. Some numbers. Joanna, do you have some numbers here from our friends abroad? You have to write down a number as well. Even the translators should write down the number of trucks leaving Portugal. The person who wins a dinner in a seafood restaurant in Matosinhos in Portugal, near Porto. So do we have numbers here? I just added value to the product. Very well said, Miguel. Even more added value then. We have a different perception here of the customers' different markets. So Patricia, what did you say? 13,000. Miguel, what do you think? 10,000. Gonçalo. 8,500 approximately. 7.5. Ellie? I'm gonna say 8,000. Joanna? 25,000. Our translators, people abroad in Italy, are saying 8,000. The last data from 2012 said 10,000. So the management man here wins a dinner. Well, I have to pay him a dinner. Here I am, added value to the business. Well, 10,000 trucks according to 2012 data. It might have increased or decreased. But this number is very important because it has to do with the choice of the transport mode. So now, are you aware of the weight of the road transport in the whole Europe in the emission of carbon dioxide? It's about 90%. Also, 2011 or 2012 data. Why am I focusing on this? Because we are facing the probability that the transport agent is a factor that has a great influence in the change of paradigm in the emission of gas and carbon and in the environment crisis, because it has to demonstrate the economic validity and the environmental validity. Europe has lots of problems up to 2030, where this 90% had to be substantially reduced for less than a half until 2020, and this is through a great fight of road transport. This is a data that is very important. There are great initiatives of European character, according to eco taxes, for example, great initiatives in countries such as France to fight road transport. And all of this brings back that same question. When we are doing a proposal of a transport mode with a customer that is in Leiria, Chave, Guarda, Régua, that is in interior areas, central areas, and in littoral areas, most of the agents is going to have the temptation to present only the road quotation, of course. Almost no one is going to think, although we're speaking about Hamburg, that is the main port of Europe, almost no one is going to want to present a quotation that has to do with maritime transport, and no one is going to present a road transport This is a great difficulty. Yes, please. Microphone, please. Well, some people now just present maritime quotations, which is good because in terms of future development, well, it's not worth it. Well, this is a good thing, Elio. Well, please pass the microphone to Elio. If we do a consolidation with several customers, it can compensate in this time. Well, being a freight forwarder is what it's mean. A freight forwarder, as I usually say, has nothing to do with direct cargo, as I usually say. He's sedentary, so to say. But it's almost the case, really. His role is to combine cargo and trying to find competitiveness in what are small cargo, because if we take invisible cargo, we're going to keep on polluting. Ellie, please. A while ago, there was a conference regarding sea railways in Portugal, and the entity that was coming up with this project, and they invited many freight forwarders to be part of this conferences, and I was there as an assistant, and I noticed that one of the critical points that was put on the table there was the fact that some economic agents of transport in Portugal didn't have subsidiaries correspondence in the destination place, or still hadn't developed contacts with local partners in other countries, so has to do exactly this, that is to agilize the process of consolidation and deconsolidation. And nowadays, we have a successful cases in short seas, but I think it's the fruit of this network vision, so we have to leave our comfort zone and try and accompany the cargo up to the end. And this also implies a change of governance by the companies. I don't know if well, this puts another question that has to do with this, that is the level of maturity of the knowledge of management and of the new realities in European transport and the European regulation in terms of transport. The level of maturity that the transport agents in Portugal do or don't have, because one of the fundamental aspects, and this is a personal opinion, is that we should make a greater effort in the whole supply chain management in the carriers, the freight forwarders, the customs breakers here with a smaller intervention, clearly, of course, and in the carriers, focusing on the training of their managers and frame them in the European challenges. Because if I go to a freight forwarders or a logistic operator or an importing or exporting company and ask to each employee what are the main challenges in the transport in Europe for the next 20 years, very few have a relatively exact notion of what I'm talking about, of what's being discussed currently. Do you think I'm wrong? Or do you believe that in freight forwarders, carriers, everyone is aware of what's happening in Europe? Now, another question. Are you aware of how much the Europe buys of export products of Portugal? Do you have an idea? What's the weight of European destinations in Portuguese exports, in the total export? Here I'm going to do, as we do in TV shows, I'm going to ask Patricia here. What's this weight, Patricia? We're in numbers today. What's the weight according to you? 40%. Miguel. Justina. 45 approximately. Gonçalo. Maybe not so much. Maybe 25. Vasco. 27.5. Elio. I have no idea, but I'm around 40%. 2013 data, 75 to 80%. So Portugal only has present and future in Europe. These are a fundamental data, and that eventually the European crisis might have reduced, but we believe that the Angola crisis also reduced it, so it's approximately around 75%. How about Spain in our exports? What's the weight of Spain? $55. Fernando. She's completely outside this business. No, not Fernando, Miguel. Maybe 35? Maybe 40? Vasco. 50. Earlier, it's more. I believe it's around 70 or 80. Well, Spain is worth 25% of the total of export. So why am I giving you these numbers? It's for you to understand how the great diagnose of the maturity of the knowledge of the transport agents here in Portugal is nuclear, and you can see it because you are all managers, and something that logistic management tells us is that from the managers to all the other agents, to all the other elements, what is our mission? What are our objectives? What do we do for who? So you are managers of the transport business, and this is something that everyone who works at that level should know. Which are the exporting geographies of Portugal and their weight, because by knowing this we have a notion, and that's why you're here. You had the interest to find out, because this way the knowledge of the supply chain is much greater and we can add value.
And value why? Because we need to invest in trying to see to what measure short C, as our colleague is doing, is in fact a path to the future, because more and more for each ton that exits via autoroute for the Pyrenees, we'll have environmental taxes on it in a few days. So all the solutions that we present and we try to find need to go against this. I'll give you another challenge, because you are in this course is the management of the supply chain, not only port chain. Ports as a factor of development, but development as a complement, and when we see intermodality, do you have an idea, for example, the constraint that it's the Iberian taking our economic activity? I don't know if you have a notion of that. Do you? No? Okay. Michel, Patricia, Gonçalo? Okay. Vasco. Elida, Soelo, please. Help me. What I do know about the subject is that Portugal and Spain, for historical reasons, have adopted a spacing between railway different from the rest of Europe. That spacing between railways, it's shorter, I believe, makes for the cargo that it's transported by railway. When it arrives to the Spanish frontier with France or the Pyrenees, needs to be changed, or the units themselves of transport bring different railways, different accesses, or the cargo needs to be moved. What happens is that DB Schenker, for example, in Portugal, has launched a first service about 2 years ago. I was here in the port of Leixões when a colleague from DB Schenker spoke about this. But they keep having a loss of almost a day or more there. So it is needed and fundamental, according to the strategic plan for the Trans-European Network of Transport, that Portugal can have an European route that adds not only the subject of infrastructure, but also signaling because even personnel that operates trains needs to have a special license to drive those trains in Europe, and the signals themselves are different from the Iberian Peninsula from the rest of Europe. That's what I know. It's a very important data, and I was just looking for some numbers here that can help us. I'll show you. This is from 2015, and just for you to have an idea, the Portuguese commerce with the European Union, and these are data, if I'm not mistaken, from 2012 of INE. The Statistics Institute said that 80% of the transport of the European Union was made by route, 14% by sea, aerial 2.8, and others 2.4. In Europe, these indicators are very different. Not only because we have a lot of sea transport, it's a region of river transport. We have also a lot of short sea, a lot of traffic between the main ports of Hamburg, Rotterdam, and Antwerp, and of smaller dimension. And because we have a railway that's quite strong, obviously in the short distance, the road transport has a lot of weight in Europe, but the goals that Europe has to energy efficiency are amazing, because we need to have the notion that the great factor of energy consumption in Europe, in the world of transports, is road. That's why you know when you have hearing that great part of the fight that it's being made is to fight exactly that, because of the environmental sustainability. So when we speak of the law that's miserable that goes out of the railway, the role of the freight forwarder and logistic operator is to identify success lines in the present and critical lines for the next success, which is a sustainable one. And why? Because that will change the way that business is made. No one thought that the car would change so early and quickly from diesel and petrol to hybrid and electric, and what happened now, it is in China now. I thought that would not be made, but in China they are doing tests to the emissions of the cars who are being sent into the market. So the Daily Telegraph had this news on it today. What this means is that Portugal and Spain have an handicap of competition to get to European countries, because while these countries to go within themselves have 3 or 4 transport modes, we Portuguese have 90-something% of our transport, or 80%, is reduced to the roadway. This will be green fiscalization, and what will this bring to our industry, to our agriculture? Will it modify it or penalize it? Of course, that everything that can be made to be ordered to improve industrial producers in a logic, as we said yesterday, of cooperative logistics that increase the cargo units to be moved, and it allows the exploitation and transfer of roadway to the short sea. It's an advantage, and what your colleague is doing is, and it's very good, he would need to be helped and gain a lot of technical knowledge, because that experience should be disseminated and trained in freight forwarders that have a critical process, and that process to bring conscience to their commercial equipment, to be mobilized people for a transfer of road transfer to short sea, because this has a consequence, is a change of production modes of commerce and managing networks. It's not impossible to work like this, because Europe works exactly like this. The other important data, Spain has a project that would end in 2018, which is to they're not working on the European pattern anymore. The Spanish have understood that they need to have the European pattern because that's important to protect the Spanish industry. But when the economy and industry in Spain did not have consumption, they had an idea from Franco, which was to protect the market through a different pattern because they did not have an economy that was directed to Europe. Spain and Portugal were sent to Europe. The only thing that we wanted from Europe was to send migrants in the 60s and the 70s. Now it's different. The main destination, what I said regarding Portugal, is the same for Spain. The dependency that Spain has an European market the consumption of its products is amazing. And what is the weight, for example, of the Portuguese and Spanish market, which is 25% of the exports, is almost the same proportion. But Spain has some changes regarding the political quadrants of investment. A station of the Iberian state in Spain needs to have various stations to have some difficulty. That's why in Portugal we have special opportunities that will be compared in order to transform the railway. We have two big questions, which is to exit the northern part and the one that comes from Pilar Formos, and the other which is the south one. Problem needs to be developed, but it's being developed can put at stake the exit 9, so it depends on the option of increasing the existing network or having a network of a new line, mixed line. This is very important for us. This to give the idea it's fundamental for us to compete. We can lower the unit cost when we transform the roadway from the railway, and so we can increase the sea transport because this is very important in Europe. We need to understand that we need to improve the logistics cycle, eliminating waste and failures in order that of logistics can bring the pressure of providing in 3-4 days can be replaced by delivering in 5 or 6 days or 4 or 5 through short sea. And so it's important that to learn more about this, and you can understand your companies need to understand more about this because this will change a lot in the next 5 years. The way that goods are entered in Portugal will change radically. Not because we want to, but because the conditions of competition of European countries will be in a way that we have no solution. When this happens, we can lose competitiveness because we are sort of like, we have no maturity in this process that we did not have before. That's why we needed to have great companies, great sets of chargers or carriers that have invested and have policies of development of other transport blocks to fight the price of the road transport. This has to do with railway and the maritime transport. And the intermodality of those questions, this is a simple question. How can we add value every day when we are able to? I will show you the previous slide. Identifying the benefit of having the right conditions. And this is translated in indicators that we need to create logistic character from the annual from the unit cost. Even if the world port line we need to understand that in order for this to be efficient, we need to diminish waste in the supply chain. And how can this difference, excess of supply, cost of transport, stocks, with an activity in the logistic process, load and flaws or defects and over-processing. Well, this efficiency is what we want to look for and we want to develop. Maybe this is a fundamental piece. Even if we are diversified, how can we use transport in quantity with effect in implementing our rates of profitability? Most of the cargo that you are sending to Europe are made how? Is it a pallet or not? What's the weight of our cargo? I was speaking with Gonzalo, the company where they come from or where they work is my client, because more than the transport that I do, even if it's road, maritime, or aerial, I have emission of T1s or T2Fs of transport documents for cargo that are dispatched, that are in transit, and I do a lot of these for cargo for Switzerland. Regarding trucks, there are complete trucks, for example. I have the notions that the trucks are complete, but I'm not directly connected with transport itself. But the truck is complete, but it must be divided in a lot of different. Do you have the notion there's a lot of fragmentation? Yes, it's more fragmented. The complete trucks, yes, very fragmented. So our main exit's not really. Effectively, it's more for fragmented than the complete ones. This is only to focus the tendency, which is a pulverization of cargo. The waste fighting unnecessary stocks. It's a fragmentation of requests.
They place lots of orders and treat lots of orders with a reduced cost, where the logistic cost is not low in the production. It's one thing to handle the transport process, and it's something else to have a process transport that doesn't work. But there are several steps that have to be part of the process and that have to be facilitated for us. Well, we have to think in which way we can reach Luxembourg. It can be not only thought of in the logic of each piece and its cost, but think about the quantity of cargo that we can usually buy. There's something from my personal experience here that I'd like to mention. In '98, a colleague of mine with great experience in the management of airports said that they were going to start and create some rappel of some sort in the transport. And I thought it wasn't a good idea. I just said that things to go from one point to another had a certain cost, and that's it. But after a while, the truth is that we did this experiment with some of our customers, that is, components that generally cost 10,000 old Portuguese crowns in transport. When I did this kind of transport, I then had a voucher to use in another transport, and that helped us to create create customers and to fidelize them in a different way. And so we can handle this with some rationality because the cargo of transport that they used to buy each month had a very controlled variation. So I'm mentioning this as an example because it wasn't my idea. It was an idea of a colleague of mine, and I was a bit resistant at first, but then I was convinced because transport agents have, according to the legal terms, of course, and according to some timetables, it's not possible as well. Patricia is laughing here. But we need to think of different ways to develop marketing strategies, logistic marketing strategies that create sustainable value to the product that is going to be bought somewhere in Europe. I don't know if I'm communicating my idea here. And for people who are speaking about this strategy, the action that you're doing, we need to identify new objectives and new ways to achieve these objectives. The main objective of transport is to answer to the needs of the customers who are at the origin of the delivery and the customers who are going to be the recipients of this order as well. And reducing waste and contributing to the reduction of unit cost of the goods is the only way for us to have a strategic advantage in a market where our position in microeconomic and not a macroeconomic logistic is favorable. For example, someone who is in Spain or in northern Spain might have more conditions to find less expensive products in French supermarkets because the scale of production of a farm in Spain is much greater than a farm in Portugal, for example. So we need to say what are the advantages of the several nations. We can see how Italy, for example, can compete with other nations. It's a logic of group, of collaboration. To exemplify here, in the appliance market during the last 20 years, we could assist a very strong logic of incorporation and merging of company to look for this scale in the production of materials, in production lines, in transport, in the distribution network, for you to have an idea. Philips, that was a great manufacturer in the 70s, was bought by Warp, who was already a market leader, that then purchased from Electrolux, and after them was Indesit, the Italian company. Anus had already been bought by Electrolux, so they bought Philips, Electrolux, and they just purchased last year Indesit. The Antonio Maroni group in Italy. The scale, of course, is a factor of economic advantage per se, and in terms of supply chain management. The question that is then asked in the macroeconomic analysis is this: how does each economic unit in each region will be able to contest what is its limitations, its constraints, to be able to compete in a global market? And we have here two levels of action. One level of action that is macro, where we have the states that have to be aware that they have to contribute in an affirmative way to the globalization and public investment in the improvement of transport. They have to contribute as well in the modernization of road networks, and each economic agent has to be concerned not only with the glass manufacturers, with the paper manufacturers, but also with the suppliers of these sectors and the people providing logistic services here that can be transversal and find answers for the question of the best transport in terms of manner, quantity, quality, and safety. And this is a great question. That is a logistic question that can only be answered through an interrogation and the diagnosis of the maturity of the management process in the industries, in the distributors, and in their logistic service providers, who might want to stay critical or become critical. Because if you see something, for example, DHL, UPS, Conan or other reference operators, what they do is that they try to sell solutions of supply chain management. They're going to buy transport from Portuguese companies, but the management of the channel, the management of the processes is what they're trying to negotiate, because they know that that's where they're going to be able to insert the critical factor, and that's where they're going to be able to, sorry for the word, but to crush the freight forwarders, the carriers, because they know that they have the decision chain and they have the key to decision in the hand, because they invest in a logic of dominion of the national transport networks and in their interconnections with geographies of the final destination of the product. Does this make sense to you? Just to finish this first part, do you have any questions? Do you have any notes? Any questions? No? Patricia? No? Ash? No? Well, we'll just have a little break here, and we'll be back. I'll just ask you to go to the break and to think about in which way what we said here about the supply chain management and bringing a medium-term vision to this transport business, how it can be brought to the customer and how it can be used. The same challenge is for people abroad, how the transport agents can become critical agents of the management of the economic processes. All right? Good coffee. 15 to 20 minutes.